Hello, friends. We're going OG style on this one, and I really want to focus on what we can learn, all of us, really, from a young Iron Mike Tyson, going all the way back to his days with Teddy Atlas, Kevin Rooney, and certainly most importantly, Cus D'Amato. My reasoning for doing this is really a fewfold. Firstly, I grew up on a steady diet of combat sports. Um, Firstly with Marvin Hagler when I was really young, and he was kind of on his way out. This is 80s, early 80s, and while I loved and admired Hagler, his ambidexterity, etc., very blue collar approach. He was from the same state I was. I didn't really understand a lot of the complex nature of the sweet science. But I had some idea of what I was watching with the guidance of my father, etc. So in the mid '80s, there was really no UFC or MMA. The kickboxing scene was lethargic at best. So the baddest man on the planet was in fact probably better described as a man-child, really. Mike Tyson was getting national exposure before, I think, his 16th birthday. And at the time, my old man followed boxing probably as closely, maybe not quite, but close anyway to the way that I follow MMA today.
Scientist?
I never allowed myself to be influenced by people unless they influenced me with facts.
Disciplinarian?
Discipline. Discipline enables a person to do that which needs to be done, which is also my definition of a professional, no matter how he feels within.
And fight trainer.
The physical part of boxing is so minor that most people would never believe it or accept it, because in my opinion, the mind and emotions are about 75% of boxing. Desire to win. He wants to be the best. And with a fellow with this type of competitive spirit, plus the knowledge that he has gained and the punching power, I can't see him lose.
But perhaps the most remarkable attribute that young Mike Tyson carries with him is his age. You see, Mike Tyson is only 16 years old.
Well, many of you could probably care less how I kind of got from A to B to now to the present. I do think that a variety of influences, diverse, and kind of like the diversity of the pugilists that I've always looked up to and admired from afar in my personal journey to get to where I am now, whether it's knowledge-wise or whatever litmus test you want to use, is it's important, if for nothing else, than to better understand the how, which I always would kind of put in quotes. So the other big reason, and those of you that have watched me on the podcast and stuff, we went over this kind of ad nauseum, but I'm just seeing many a UFC fighter in what I would call today's landscape that are akin to like a soldier without proper command. There's for every Mighty Mouse and Matt Hume or George St. Pierre and Faraz Sahabi, there's 1,000 John Does with all the talent and potential in the world that are just lacking, an intelligent general, much like Cus D'Amato would be, or, like I mentioned earlier, Kevin Rooney, Teddy Atlas, and the like. So, of course, I'm going to cover his technique, and we'll do a breakdown as always, but the important lesson here, especially with a young Iron Mike, is the willingness to learn and the yearning to perform well for someone else. There was this undying, this unconquered need to impress Cus that went on pretty much up until, some would argue, Don King sort of ruined him, whether it was emotionally or financially, or maybe a combination of both. So let's begin, shall we? Okay, so doing this somewhat in order, we're going to start with him as an amateur. Reckless, athletic, powerful, aggressive, but not very refined yet. As a professional, the athleticism, killer instinct, etc., were sort of refined into a cerebral fighter. And this is of course due to Cus's influence, right? A great example of his shift, the D'Amato shift, or what I call hot pivots in my breakdowns, and his jabbing his way inside to then square his hips for power. The right hooks to the body, left hooks to the body would then be followed by uppercuts to the head often. Here you're seeing some more of that. You also see his left foot leave the canvas there amidst his power punches. So he's putting a little bit too much heat on everything, and it was working for the time, but obviously as time progresses, then the skills can then become refined. So here he's using a jab basically to draw out a jab, and what he wants to do is throw an overhand right over the jab, which is a difficult counter to pull off, certainly for an amateur, or in this case a kid. And he doesn't completely land flush there. He actually kind of uses it more like a peel, or some might say the Dutch hand trap. So remember, Tyson's success was a devotion to a system, right? His offense was his defense. They were symbiotic. It's not really so different from like a check hook in theory. So here you're going to see him slip and rip from a seated stance, which coils that left hand, that sort of Joe Louis-esque leaping left. Similarly here, it's kind of a 1-3 to break the center line, and he sees that there's no liver shot, so he makes a really quick read on the fly and uses that right hook from southpaw. So following that knockdown, you're not really going to see any tricks or treats for that matter. Tyson's just barraging with strikes here, and you can see the techniques improving. His hands are higher. He's slipping the jab kind of inside to then coil into the Joe Louis, as mentioned prior. Look on that face is telling. Here he's drawing out punches. This time it's kind of flashing a right hand. It's like a pronounced fake, and that's not only going to like clear a lane, it's also going to angle and load the hips for power. You're going to see more jabbing, more slipping through the weak offense, and then, explosion to kind of capitalize and or finish. One of my personal favorites here, Mike noticed a dropping right hand and a left hook. Naturally, his best punch would be a 3 of his own. He's developing his bobbing and weaving here, and he's creating an angle while doing it. Also noteworthy is the fact that he's doubling up on that left hook. Similarly here, you're going to see some like dynamic flurrying, and again, once he gets inside and would sort of explode into his kind of hasty little bursts, there was kind of no rest for the wicked. And of course, flashing the right hand, still a little unrefined. The ref stepping in, you're going to see a little bit more of that, but it is what it is. Level changing flick jab feint into a brutal and accurate 4 here. Another broken man mentally, really. This is uncanny and unteachable. The speed of that right hand is just absurd. Now he's getting closer to his prime, or stride, or whatever you want to call it. You're seeing faster hips and movement laterally, and the way that he's evading these punches and creating his offense, as I mentioned prior, off of his defense, is really the telltale prime Tyson that people will think of. It's slipping and ripping. It's right hands like this that are coiled up off of feints, keeping his eyes always on center of mass, not really getting hit much. Watch, this is a really good camera shot, especially considering the year. That guy didn't see that somehow. So whatever tell Mike was giving him to take his eyes off of that, or this guy's, some of that is the power of the punch, but a lot of times it's the angle of it. I mean, when he's hitting King Haku here with the left hook, that guy, I think his name's Donnie something. He was like, I don't know, 6'6", 280. We're talking about a giant human being who's a little sloppy with his punches and maybe not the greatest heavyweight of all time, but Mike's punching with ferocity that's putting people away. Like, it's not in the air literally, not in the literal sense, but the triple uppercuts and the slipping to rip and the way that he would just move inside, occasionally popping his jab up, meanwhile evading theirs in order to then create chaos and just absolute savagery. And there is his single greatest combination, which is the right hook to the body followed by the right uppercut. This is one of the craziest things you'll ever see, ducking down at a level that is absolutely unparalleled. That slip drop step hop right there into the left hook is brilliant. Let's watch that again, slow down. We don't, however, want to get too caught up in the nomenclature. So what I call like a drop step pivot, it's a hop pivot, etc. People are going to say it's the D'Amato shift. It doesn't matter. Just understand the technique. What he was doing was evading via backward step, but it's both at the same time, which puts him from orthodox to then southpaw. This is his version of Samart. Basically, I think he evaded something like 13 punches there before landing what ended up being like a knockout shot. He, I think, got hit maybe with one of them, although Tyson did have an incredible chin. Something not spoken about enough, and yeah, that uppercut kind of grazed him. And again, I've talked about the coiling. He does it at the last second there to land that then knockout punch. This guy was like Sammy Chef, I believe his name. Some white goofy oaf like this dude. There were certainly people on his path that weren't maybe laced with gold, but it's really not the point. It's movement most of the time. It's no different than recruiting talent for any sport, really. You see this development, and I'm a firm believer that if Cuss had, say, discovered Mike when he was 50 rather than 70, how things would be different. If Kevin Rooney was still around, Atlas, the likes of those guys, because they had his respect and admiration. Again, what I'm calling a Joe Louis-ish hook. There's the body to always expose the head, the right into it, and this is similar to the things we're seeing Lomachenko do today. That's probably the best right hook to uppercut combination you'll see. Again, you can only do so much with working on power. Power is, I believe, mostly a gift. Whether it's bone structure, the nature of your muscles. This is Marvis Frazier. Rogan talks about this fight a lot. This was an assault. That uppercut that just landed and the way his head hit that rope. He looks like he could be dead. Terrifying. I think the fight was clocked in at like something like 39 seconds. Again, we see right hook body, right uppercut, square hips, and every time he gets somebody cornered like that, sometimes they can evade enough to kind of butt scoot their way out. But when he gets people cornered, it's usually with like his little flick jab, but he's using his defense via his bob weave to get inside, and then all of a sudden their reach becomes a moot point. His hips are completely square and or parallel to the opponent's, and that provides him with power from both sides, and he had it with both hands. It was really difficult, and Cuss has talked about this at length, finding sparring partners for Mike just because of that. Again, as you see, it's the speed at which he makes reads. He sees openings and he exploits them immediately upon seeing them. And when you're seeing it from this angle here, how quickly he moves into that vicious pop jab. It's absolutely incredible, and there's still not really a heavyweight that's done this, and not with this kind of speed. And you got to remember, he's 18 or 19 years old here. Just absolute savagery and beautiful flat top. Unfortunately, hitting the mat, but here was, I believe, Tubbs. Good last name for the guy, I guess. And I want to pretty much finish on this. This is certainly one of his brightest moments against Trevor Berbick, who was a tough guy and champ. This is when Mike first won the belt, and I believe he was 19 or 20 years old. Youngest heavyweight champion of all time. This guy was on Queer Straight dichotomy. Queer Street from the jump, and he's frustrated with it, but I don't think he knew what was coming, and I don't think anyone really did when it came to good old Iron Mike. Larry Holmes kept him at bay for a few rounds with his wonderful jab that he's always had, but he was no match for the speed and or the ferocity. And hopefully on your own, I wanted to do something different here. You're seeing the development of skill of Tyson as he progressed. There is a downfall, of course, we all know about. It wasn't really any secret, but if you watch him from amateur days to right there, and that beautiful uppercut he landed on Michael Spinks, it's probably one of the greatest moments ever. Hopefully you learned something on your own. That was sort of the idea of this in the first place. Also, just to give you an idea of the actual skill level of Mike Tyson, in that he wasn't just some unrefined savage brawler. He was actually a tactician and a result of great coaching. And I don't think the importance of either of those things can ever be overstated and or understated. So hope you enjoyed. Comment section, whatever you'd like. I'm gonna do a few non-UFC breakdowns, so let me know what you want. All right, cheers.